Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Haunt of Love and Lies. Episode 12. Chapter 104. Killian's point of view. It was a gruesome pain. Like I had been stabbed straight in the heart by my very own mate. It hurt. It hurt so badly that I couldn't believe this. The pain that was engraved in the deepest corners of my heart transformed as quickly into a severe rage. I could feel the corners of my eyes darken with extreme emotions that entirely shut off my reasoning. The only thing I wanted was to have his blood on my hands. To feel the sickening euphoria of that heart in my claws. I moved incredulously fast with my non-human speed. In a murderous second, I was right next to where Kaiser and Sheila were. I gripped her tightly, pulling her away from Kaiser's arms. My eyes tore through the instant shock that was plastered on Sheila's blue eyes. Her eyes gave it all right away. I could see everything that was going through her mind imprinted on her round, shocked gaze, and the blatant truth was she had lied to me. She had a lover, and it was my worst enemy. I didn't know which one killed me the most. The fact that Sheila had a lover all along, or the fact that her lover happened to be my worst enemy who has always wanted me dead. My hold on Sheila's arms firmed, as I pulled her closer to me. Even if you had a lover, why did it have to be him of all people? I counted each word painfully, embracing the pain that vibrated against my joints. Have you forgotten everything I told you he did to my family? To our pack? The pain was the only thing I could feel at the moment. It had been such a long time since I felt this intense pain. The last time I felt such deathly pain was the day I witnessed both my mother's and Carl's death right before my eyes. This pain was as equal to that, or maybe much worse. Sheila held me with her other hand. Killian, it's not even close to what you think. She let out. I could feel her body tremble against my hold, but not from fear for me. It was fear of something else. Then what is it, Sheila? Fury began to push itself to the surface. What could explain you being in the arms of someone else? A god-forsaken black. I growled at her. I didn't turn around to look, but I could hear the low growls of Kaiser's wolf like he was battling hard with his wolf to remain in control. Sheila sent a pleading look at him, before returning her stare to me. She didn't flinch a bit at my flowering. Killian, Kaiser is. I hated the manner in which his name rolled from her lips. Don't take his name out of your lips. And who do you think you are yelling at? Kaiser's loud growl sounded next to us, evidently pissed and wanting blood as well. I had never seen him this enraged, not even when we were at each other's throats. Sheila's head snapped to him again. Kaiser, no! She yelled. One could feel the fear and concern that rushed through her words. They were more lethal than any poison to the soul. I shifted my gaze from Sheila to him. His hazel irises were completely black. My pain was now replaced by more rage. I released my hold on Sheila's arm and turned to Kaiser. His hair was gleaming under the bright moon and his black gaze mirrored the expression of the moon. Immediately, my hands sharpened into claws, and so did Kaiser. Kaiser! She screamed as I was about to lunge at him and stepped in between us. Please don't! He has no right, she kept on pleading. The scene before me kept infuriating me. Now she was worried about her lover getting hurt. I growled, barreling my claws at him. Swiftly, I felt a puncturing pain within me. We fought against each other, while Sheila's pleas kept invading my ears, distracting me. Kaiser and I were already badly wounded, fighting against each other, but none of us was ready to stop. I swear I could die with the rage felt if I didn't end his life tonight. Stop it! Sheila's scream pierced right through us, echoing into the night and frightening the night's air. In an instant, Kaiser and I were sent flying in two opposite directions. I crashed hard against a tree, its sharp branch wood piercing into my stomach. I groaned, breathing heavily as I ripped the branch from the tree and pulled it out of me. I charged at Kaiser again, but Sheila blocked me. Enough of this madness, you two, please. Sheila was in the middle of the clearing field, her eyes darting from Kaiser to me. The darkness around us and the entire meadow was dead silent. He was glaring at me so hard before his lips parted and broke the deafening cold silence. It's over, you can't stay with this god-forsaken anymore, let's go, Sheila, Kaiser's voice sounded, and his last words made me freeze. My pale gaze immediately shifted from Kaiser to Sheila, seeking her out, pinning her to my stare. I wanted to see exactly what she would do. Sheila's gaze left mine and fell back on Kaiser. Kai, please, I beg you, leave now, I am not leaving you here with him. Kaiser was immensely enraged. His rage and her worry made me go mad. Please, Kai, she implored more. He was about to counter her again, but she took a few steps closer to him. Just do this for me, please. Kaiser stopped at her words. He was shaking with vexation, clearly not loving her decision. Abruptly, I scoffed. I was not going to stand here and be a witness to this absurdity. I stormed away from the meadow, returning to the unwelcoming coldness of the woods. My breathing was hard and rough. The image of Sheila running into his arms haunted my consciousness. Killian, I heard Sheila's call from behind. But I kept on moving, not even sparing a glance behind. Killian, she yelled all the more as she finally caught up with me, blocking my path. My eyes landed on her. Even with the canopy trees that had impeded the moon's light from penetrating the woods, I could see her electric blue eyes. Those perfect blue eyes had always regarded me with so much love. What went wrong? Kai is not my lover. It's far from what you think, she began, but my abrupt laughter silenced her words. Then why did you seek him out? Why on earth were you in his arms? I shouted, but her blue eyes only bored me harder. Aren't you going to answer me? I will, Killian. I will tell you everything you want to know, but first calm down. Are you serious right now, Sheila? I held her wrist, jerking her closer to me while my other hand sunk into her hair that cascaded down her neck. I could feel her body trembling hard against mine. I brought my face inches away from hers so that her only option was to stare deep into my eyes. I wanted her to see the hurt that stood there. I wanted her to see the broken mess she had made me into. My heart clenched tightly at the new emotion that appeared in her gaze. Sheila's soft hand cupped my face, and her gaze on me never moved away. I couldn't stop myself from leaning into her touch. I hate his scent on you, I whispered against her ears. Only my scent should be on your body, I said. I heard her gasp gently, her sweet breath fanned me. Only mine, and no one else. My voice was in a raspy whisper as I closed my eyes and leaned against her forehead. If it was someone else, it probably wouldn't hurt this much, because I know I deserve much worse after everything I have done to you. I am no hypocrite, but it's a black. My worst enemies, I said to her, feeling her slow steady heartbeat against mine. See, how do you expect me to tell you everything when you hate them so much? But there's nothing between Kaiser and me, at least it's not how you think. Hate is an understatement, they killed my brother and have been hounding my pack since then. And so, have you stopped defending them? I shouted, digging her into my chest so that her lips brushed mine. Tell me the truth now, if he isn't your lover, why are you so eager to jump to their defense? Why? I felt my anger fusing with my soul. I couldn't control it. This was one of the effects of the curse if the curse isn't broken by tomorrow night. Killian, calm your rage or it'll consume you and our efforts to break the curse will all be in vain, she said. You want to know the truth? Then I will tell you, but right after the curse is broken tomorrow night, otherwise, your rage could ruin everything, or you are just afraid, I might hurt your lover. Flame coursed through my veins and pumped my heart aggressively. I took a step away from her. Just stay away, or I might end up hurting you, I said in a hoarse voice, watching the pain in her eyes. I wanted to hurt her the way she had hurt me tonight. And with the look of pain in her eyes, I knew it would haunt me for the rest of my life. Sheila's point of view. I jammed the door to Killian's chamber shut. He still hasn't returned, and no one seems to know his whereabouts all morning. Not even his beta, his friend. I sighed. Everything might have been much easier if Morgan had returned from the witch's coven. But neither he, Lorenzo, and Valerie were in the castle at the moment, and it was already daylight and only a few hours to twilight. I sauntered from Killian's room, exiting the hallways. I was heading back to my chamber, opting for a quick shower when Ria hurried up to me. I stopped at her instant sharp call, swerving around to meet her. She was holding a brown bonded paper in her hands. What is that? I raised a brow as we continued walking back to my chamber. It's a message. The patrolling guards told me it came this morning for you, she voiced as we reached my chamber. Her voice was normal, frankly, much better than some of the pack members and warriors I had met today. They all wore worried and fearful looks. I couldn't blame them though. Tonight was the crescent moon rising which decided everyone's fate. They all had already begun to experience the pain from the crescent moon coming, and I knew it would be worse on Killian, and that worried me terribly. I took the bonded brown paper from her, my eyes inspected it thoroughly. There wasn't anything written on it, but I recognized the mark that was at the bottom of the paper. It was almost unnoticeable. But still, I knew exactly who the message came from. I tossed it carelessly on the dressing table, backing away from it. What? Aren't you going to open it? Ria's soft body fell on the bed. There's no reason to, I know who it's from and I don't want to hear anything from him, especially today. The skin on Ria's forehead crippled as she pulled up from the bed, and rested on her elbows. Who is the letter from? My blue eyes found hers, and I hesitated for a broken second before replying. My father, I muttered slowly, turning to the giant mirror pinned to the wall. I pulled my hair up in a messy bun and began stripping. It might be important, why don't you take a look? She sounded. I shook my head against the idea. There was nothing of importance that man could ever say to me. It had taken so much from me not to confront that man and forced him to tell me the entire truth about what happened years ago. But my brothers kicked against it. They wanted me to remain silent. They didn't want Lucius to know that I had regained my lost memories and my identity yet. I will be right back. I turned towards the washing room, and Ria stood up from the bed. I have to go now, but I will be back before evening. I have some patrolling to do before the Blue Moon Warriors arrive, Ria told me. I nodded to her words, watching her leave my chamber. Tonight was going to be hellish for Killian and the wolves, especially during the ritual the witches were going to perform. It didn't feel good leaving the pack unprotected when the ritual was in place and the wolves were busy. Killian had to request some warriors from an allied pack in North Central, and they'll be here, hopefully before the sun sets. I rushed in for a shower and was done in a short time. I got dressed in one of my blue velvet dresses and combed through the natural curls of my hair. And I was done. But I remained seated in front of the mirror hung near the dressing table. Abruptly, memories of what happened between Killian and Kaiser played over and over in my mind. I rubbed my hands together, groaning internally. I wished I could have told him the truth last night. I just wished I had. It's not your fault, girl, Adi chimed. Even though I felt so much pain, she was right. I couldn't tell Killian, not before the crescent moon night. He had already begun to experience the effect of the crescent moon curse, and telling him would only trigger his blood rage which he has no control over at the moment. Having that happen before the crescent moon night would be disastrous. I shook out from my thoughts, standing up on my ankle boots. I still had so much to do before tonight. I was about to leave when my eyes fell on the brown bonded paper sent to me by my father. My gaze lingered on it for a while, before snatching the paper from the table. I began to unbind it. The first thing that caught my immediate attention was the crimson fluid that smeared my hands. Then my eyes fell on the words that were inked boldly on the brown paper. The instant my eyes swept through it, my knees went weak and my legs gave up on me. These words were written by my father. I could recognize his writing. My eyes fell on my trembling hands. This blood was Devon's. My father had him. How on earth did Lucius manage to find Devon when Killian had ensured Devon left safely for a pack in the east? I staggered back, almost collapsing on the bed. My eyes were focused on the small wooden box that was sent along with the brown paper. I rushed to it quickly and opened it. A gasp pushed from my lungs. The box was smeared with blood as well, and a finger of Devon's. I read the words that were written on the box. He was here, right inside Killian's territory, and wanted me to come, otherwise, Devon would lose his life. How did Lucius manage to sneak past our warriors at all borders of the pack without being seen? The pain I felt vanished at once and it was quickly replaced by rage. I had to find Killian. I hurried to the door, stopping abruptly. I didn't know where he was. I grabbed my furry blue cloak, the paper, and the box and left my chamber. I wasn't going to let any harm come to Devon. In a haste, I exited the castle and motioned to the woods. I took the path to the mountains where Lucius was. Aside from the fact that he had Devon, I was dying to meet him. From the letter, he must have somehow found out that I had regained my lost memories. He knew I was well aware of who I was, and exactly what he had done to me. Frankly, I was desperate to know the truth and find out how everything happened 14 years ago. How did I end up with Lucius? Why did he go through so much trouble just to keep me next to him? What did Lucius Colliso want with me? I was so eager to find out. I reached the mountainside in Killian's pack. My nose sniffed the air, and I couldn't get a whiff of anyone's scent. Something doesn't feel right, Adi said in a cautious tone. I agreed with her, something doesn't feel right. I moved closer to the mountains, prepared for anything that might happen. Where are you? I called out, hearing my voice echo through the mountains. But there was no one. I drew closer. Suddenly, I felt a wave of energy rush past me. I stopped walking immediately, but I didn't swerve around. The energy within the air grew intense. Adi and I listened using our super hearing, but we couldn't hear any sounds that indicated someone was lurking around us, nor could I get a whiff of any scent. Something was up, Adi pointed out. No, something is wrong, I muttered to her, thinking. Just on a thought, my eyes widened, realizing what was happening. But it was too late, I felt the magic directed at me. It was coming from my left. I snapped my head in that direction, pulling my hand up in the air. Without muttering a chant, I redirected whatever was lunged at me back. There was no one there, but I heard the loud crash of someone against the earth. Just what I suspected. Witches. And they had cloaked themselves, concealing everything about them, making them invisible. I should have known Lucius wouldn't fight fair. I felt the rush of wind around, they were quite a number. Something I could handle. These past few days, I have been training hard with Lorenzo. I could control my magic and had learned to some extent how to use it. Good luck, Sheila, Adi pulled back from the surface. At this point, I couldn't use any of my wolf's abilities, only my magic could sniff these out. I grabbed the dagger from my boots, giving my magic full control of my body, which made my eyes glow brighter than their usual blue. Instantly, I lunged my dagger at the blank air where I felt a magical aura, blood floated in the air, and a woman dressed in a red cloak fell dead on the dried earth, bleeding from the slit on her neck. I was attacked by the invisible forces, and thrown off my balance, but I got hold of my stance before I could crash harshly against the earth. I dropped my dagger and created a long extension of a sword with my magic from the rough wind. I blocked another attack made for my life. I channeled nature's magic from the air into my sword, and swung it around in the air, releasing its energy in a brutal form. It sent many of the witches flying around the mountains, bleeding profusely. Obviously, they didn't know who they came here for. The more I used my magic, I could feel everything that had even the tiniest trace of magical essence in them, making it easier to locate the other witches who were still cloaked. I went after the closest two. Using my magic, I focused on her beating heart, ripping it out of her chest with a single word, and she collapsed dead, next to the organ on the ground. I placed a hand on the closest witch, about to inflict the most excruciating pain she'd ever experienced on her, when a magical force ripped me off her, and I crashed against the rough corners of the mountain walls. Its harsh impact hit one of my rib cages, causing blood to spill from my lips. I groaned internally, muttering low curses to myself. Suddenly, I couldn't feel my body, as I was forced up in the air, my throat was crushing close. I tried wriggling free in the air, but I couldn't. But thankfully, Adi pushed up to the surface, taking control. She released a loud growl that rippled through the trees, echoing around the mountains. I fell roughly against the earth, but I was in control of my body once more. The magic around radiating off the witch drew closer, and I knew I had better end this madness now, or I might lose my life. I dug my nails into the earth, channeling as much magic as I could, something really dangerous, and maybe stupid Lorenzo had shown me during one of our training sessions, and I had practiced it with the flowers in the garden, but I haven't used it on any human before. I closed my eyes, and just as I felt danger my way, my lips flew open and released a resounding scream. It was different from the scream of the night I had my awakening. This didn't have any sound at all, as I channeled the earth's magic. Before my eyes, blood filled the air, and splattered on the earth. I watched as witches dressed in red cloaks fell dead on the ground. Their eyes were burned out, and their faces were covered with blood. I was up, about to take a step when I felt a sharp pain in my neck. My hand fell on my neck. It was a small arrow dart, and I felt something dark and foreign rush within me, spreading its venom within my body. I collapsed on the ground, feeling weak and strange at the same time. My eyes fluttered close, and the last face I saw was that of the witch before I lost consciousness. Killian's point of view still, I couldn't believe everything I had just witnessed. Sheila and Kaiser. That was something I didn't want to believe even though the harsh truth was staring right at me. I stopped racing past the slothful trees in the forest, pausing for a moment to get my rage under control. It had been out of control the last few days and it was only getting worse because of tomorrow's night crescent moon. I swallowed as much air as possible when I heard the subtle movements in the woods behind me. I turned around to strike when my eyes landed on Thea's darkened brown irises. Arg! Can't you just let me breathe? I growled. Her presence alone was suffocating. I turned my back to her to leave, but her words made me stop. You see, I was right all along. Sheila had a lover, and he was Kai Black. She betrayed you, Killian. You saw it with your own eyes, that she doesn't deserve you. Another furious growl left my lips, and my legs closed the distance between Thea and me. As soon as she was next to me, my nails sharpened into claws and I gripped her neck, slamming her hard against the trunk of a tree. I warned you, Thea, speak that way about my mate and kiss your life goodbye, I growled, my sharp claws piercing into her flesh, and her blood began to run down her neck, soaking her dress. Killian, you are hurting me, she croaked, and my hold on her only tightened. That's exactly what I want to do to you and anyone who drags Sheila's name in the mud. I had lost control. Aside from the rage I felt, I also felt the urge to defend Sheila. I didn't want anyone, no matter who they were or what they meant to me, to speak ill of my mate and their Luna. I was prepared to end Thea's life without hesitating, when suddenly, Thea pushed me off her with unearthly force. For a second I could swear that she didn't even lay a finger on me. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't in the right state of mind. All I could think about was my mate. I couldn't shake off the image of her in Kaiser's arms. I should have murdered him. No one had the right to touch my mate. But the look on her face told me she would have hated me for it. It pained me to admit, but she cares about him. Sheila cared about him so much that she might be willing to leave me for him. Oh, goddess, I would die if that happened. Sheila was my life. Nothing mattered in my life if she wasn't next to me. I needed her badly. I didn't know that I had zoned out on Thea and was fighting against the bitter reality of my life. Killian, my eyes snapped angrily back on Thea. Sheila cheated on you, and still, you keep her in your heart. Have you forgotten I had done the same thing with you to her? I asked, not expecting an answer from her. That was the greatest mistake of my life. The look on Thea's face was that of disbelief. But I didn't even care about her feelings, I was just so desperate to sort things out with Sheila. I wanted us to return to how we were before any of this madness. Killian, what is wrong with you? That woman has you under one of her spells. Didn't you see her in Kaiser's arms? She was even willing to save him from you. She spoke, groaning, pressing her hands hard on the wound on her neck to stop the bleeding. My eyes furrowed at her, understanding her words, and there was only one thing I could deduce from it. Were you following me or you were following my mate? Her gaze froze on me. I was only worried about you, she muttered, taking a step back as I took a step forward to her, my amber eyes burning with rage. Who are you, Thea? I asked, honestly confused. This wasn't the sweet, innocent Thea I had known. It was as if she had turned to someone else. Someone I couldn't recognize. Her brown eyes hardened, and her hands on her neck fell on both sides of her waist. You turned me into this monster, Killian. Her words were so deep that for a second, I had imagined an unwarranted hatred in her voice. I moved closer to her until we were a breath away. This side of you is terrifying, I said, and she didn't utter a word. I gazed hard into her now foreign gaze. Right after the curse is broken, I want you out of my territory at dawn. Killian, you can't, she was completely shocked. Finally, I realized that Thea was one of the biggest problems that existed in my relationship with Sheila. I can, Thea, and that's final. I swerved away from her, walking away. You will regret this, Killian, I swear, I heard Thea say behind me, but I didn't stop, I kept walking away. I morphed into my wolf and left my territory. I just needed to think calmly and I knew there was no way that could happen in the pack. I went to the one place that seemed to be the best option for me. The cottage. Soon, I left the capital and I found myself in front of the cottage. I had to sort my emotions out. Tomorrow was the crescent moon rising and I couldn't have all this bothering me. I stepped into the cottage, and Sheila's sweet scent from the last time we'd been here together invaded my nostrils. I lay on the bed, burying my head into one of the sheets that smelled like her. I didn't know when I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was so bright outside. It was noon already. I had slept soundly through the night, burying my head in Sheila's scent. Strangely, in the weirdest way, I felt calm and my head was clear. My mind went over everything that happened in the last few hours, and though the image of Sheila in Kaiser's arms haunted me, I realized that I was as good as dead without her. I didn't know when my feelings for Sheila grew this intensely. I needed her more than anything. It hurts to know that she felt something for him, but whether she had a lover, or not, didn't change anything. The truth was I loved her and was willing to do anything for her love and be whoever she wanted me to be. I sighed, I desperately wished I could talk to Riker. The curse was affecting him badly, separating Riker from my consciousness. But tonight, hopefully, the ritual will go as planned in the pack, and Sheila and I will have a fresh start in life. Hopefully. I shut my eyes, now wondering what it was that she wanted to tell me, but just couldn't until after the ritual tonight. It had me on the edge. I couldn't stop my thoughts from coming up with nonsense. Whatever it was that she had to tell me, oh goddess, please give me the strength to bear it. I left the cottage and headed back to the capital. I had to see Sheila before we got busy with the ritual. I just had to let her know that I loved her, and will always. I reached my territory, unblocking the mind link that connected me to the pack. I had blocked myself from being mind linked because I wanted to be alone. Immediately, I got mind linked by Alan. He was worried about me and informed me Sheila had been looking for me. That alone made me smile internally. I was almost at the castle when I heard a piercing growl of a wolf that filled the air and lasted only for a second. Sheila. That growl belonged to Sheila's wolf, 80, and it spelled danger. I mind-linked Ria immediately, asking about Sheila. Just then I reached the castle and hurried to my mate's chamber, finding Ria and Betrayal at the door. Before I could ask, Ria spoke up. She isn't here. I've asked around, but no one knows where she is, Betrayal added. This only confirmed my suspicion that Sheila was in danger. I left the castle and mind-linked the warriors, as well as those patrolling at all borders of the pack to search for Sheila. I went to the witch's quarters and met Gwen there. Valerie wasn't around, and Lorenzo and Morgan still hadn't returned from the coven outside of North Central. Even Gwen had no idea where Sheila was. I was mind-linked by a warrior at the northern borders, and he sounded urgent. I left with Alan, Mason, Gwen, and some warriors to the mountains near the northern borders. Upon getting there, Sheila's scent engulfed me. She had been here. We found Jax and some patrolling warriors there, and blood was everywhere but there were no bodies around. I could tell by the trail of blood that there was, but it was moved. This wasn't done by wolves, I said, there wasn't any sign of wolves' paws. There was a fight here, and I think they were witches, Gwen said after a while. But who were they fighting? Alan asked beside Mason, while my eyes fell on a small object almost covered by the earth's dust. Sheila. They were fighting her, my voice was hoarse, gliding with the rage I had fought to suppress, and pain. Sheila was here, I said, standing up, and in my hand was a small arrow dart that had Sheila's blood on it. And she's been abducted. Killian's point of view what? I heard a series of gasps behind me from Gwen and the warriors. Sheila has been abducted, I repeated slowly, my large hand covering the small arrow that was in my palm, almost crushing it. I felt its sharp pain against my palm, but the pain I felt deep in my chest was far worse. It ruptured through my chest and left my heart in ruins. My knees crashed against the earth and blood spilled on them as a new wave of fear filled the hole in my chest. I groaned, just the thought of Sheila's blood being mixed up with one of these terrified me, and it made me lose control. I fought hard not to. The crescent moon was less than 3 hours away, and I couldn't lose control, otherwise, both my pack and my mate won't make it through the night. But the pain I felt wasn't easy to push away. I wanted to release it. To find the swine that had my mate. My claws were out as I fought the rage and pain that wanted to consume me. I dug my claws into the earth and released it all in a loud shattering growling that reflected everything I felt at the moment. My pain, my rage, and my desperation to find my mate. The earth beneath me shook vehemently until my growls were over. What I felt now in my chest was something different. Something deadly. Something dangerous that I didn't mind ripping every person to shreds just to find my Sheila. I turned to Gwen. We have less than 3 hours to find my mate, and break the curse. I handed her the arrow that had a small drop of Sheila's blood. Can you locate her with this? She nodded. Yes, this will work, Alpha. She took it from me, hurrying back to the witch's quarters. I made a connection to every member and warrior of the pack, informing them of what had happened. The pack's army began to gear up, waiting for Sheila's location from Gwen. I had sent a message to Morgan and Lorenzo through the witches at the quarters, and also to Valerie and the witches who weren't in the pack, informing them of Sheila's abduction. What are the results? Do you know where she is? I asked Gwen as she stepped out from the witch spell room. She shook her head and my heart shattered the more. We couldn't locate her through the spells. What? I did the location spell using her blood over and over again, but the results are the same. We can't find her. Whoever has her, has cloaked her. Unfortunately, we can't find her using magic, Gwen explained. I grabbed a handful of my hair roughly. This can't be happening. This can't possibly be happening. Where are you, Sheila? I began to rack through my thoughts, thinking of who could have gotten into my pack with the help of witches and taken Sheila. I couldn't think of anyone who could go to the extreme, involving witches to abduct my mate, and at the same time, I could think of so many people who would do anything just so to harm me by harming my mate. Killian, I pulled from my thoughts, hearing Mason's voice. I turned to him. What if it was those imbeciles that took her again? Mason didn't mention names, but I knew exactly who he was talking about. Those blacks? I had thought about them as well. They were the first to graze my mind. But what I saw yesterday between Kaiser and Sheila lessened my suspicion of them. The look in his eyes somehow made me believe he wouldn't hurt Sheila. Even if they were to take Sheila, they wouldn't involve witches and made use of an arrow. I shook my head. I was about to counter his words, but Mason spoke again in a hurry. Think about it, they had kidnapped her once. What would stop them from doing it again? He added, but I was still not buying that. Someone else had kidnapped Sheila. From the looks of things, Sheila had gone to the mountains alone. Had she known those witches were going to be there? Did she get some kind of message? If so, why didn't she tell anyone about it? Or Mason interrupted my train of thought with his words that made me stop. Killian could be hurting the Luna right now. What if she resisted and didn't want to go with them, and so they brought the witches to take her by force or to kill her? My eyes met that of Mason's as he kept insisting the Black Blood Pack could be responsible for this. But his words could be true. What if Sheila didn't want to see Kaiser anymore and that scoundrel got enraged and took her away with force? The Black Blood Pack did have witches at their disposal. Their mother and sister were witches as well. That could have been possible. I mind-linked the warriors. We were raiding the Black Blood Pack again. I couldn't dismiss the smallest possibility that she could be there. Deep down I hoped she was there. Because if she isn't, I didn't know what I'd do. I was already going insane, and the pack's life was on the line. The pack's army and I left the pack and headed for the Black Blood pack. The sun up in the sky had begun to glow less, and dusk was slowly making its arrival known. We were in a race against time. We reached the Black Blood pack, fighting off the warriors at the borders as we forced our way into the territory, scattering around the pack in search of my mate. Every one of the warriors had a whiff of Sheila's divine scent. It would make the search easier. Before we even reached the castle, Leonardo had already been informed of our intrusion as warriors from his pack attacked mine on sight. But I escaped from the fight, racing towards the castle. I wanted to see the faces of them when I asked them about Sheila's whereabouts. I was racing, not in my wolf form, but in my human form, making the most use of my wolf's abilities. Almost all of my warriors were in their human forms. Because of the crescent moon's arrival that was almost upon us, our wolves were experiencing the effect of the curse, and we couldn't shift into our forms. I was racing past the woods. Leonardo's castle was already coming into view when I felt a familiar presence behind me, moving insanely, trying to catch up with me. I snapped my head in its direction, and my dark eyes collided with a pair of black and emerald green. Morgan! I didn't think they would make it back this soon. But there was no time to spare to chat. Sheila's life was in danger, and so were ours. In shorts, none of us were in our minds. We burst out of the woods, and the castle was a near distance away, but from nowhere a sharp breeze tickled around me and I saw a speeding blur of Kaiser's figure rush to me, but Morgan crashed against him and they began to fight. I mind-linked Morgan. We need to find out where Sheila is from that. He's our best shot. Try not to murder him, and I didn't see that blow that was already sent my way, making me lose balance. Another one was sent my way, but instead, I lunged at my attacker, Leonardo, and we began fighting as well. I could hear the loud growls of some of my warriors, fighting against Leonardo's army when all of a sudden, everyone was ripped off away from each other by a magical force. I was panting hard, rage rushing within me as I battled for control. Seriously? I heard Valerie's sharp voice, sounding angry and at the same time fearful. Next to her was Lorenzo, and behind was Gwen. It was nice to have her back, but this wasn't the time to play the peacemaker. Sheila's life was on the line. It's about time you showed up, Val. What is going on? Leonardo growled. I could see his eyes briefly scanning around the witches and my warriors. Who is he searching for? Don't play dumb. Where is she? I growled, charging forward at him. Leonardo stared blankly at me. His spotless blue eyes shifted from me to Valerie, and then returned to me. What are you saying? He sounded, his voice holding no emotion, but his eyes couldn't mask the fear that pushed forward. Kaiser was next to Leonardo, immediately. What are you saying? He repeated Leonardo's words, showing the same fear. We know you have her. Don't make this more complicated. It won't end well for any of us. Just return her to us. Morgan was growling, and the confused looks of both Leonardo and Kaiser told me they had no idea of what we were saying. They don't have her, Valerie muttered from where she was, and I couldn't even fight her words. They were the obvious truth. Her. Kaiser turned to Valerie, his loud beating heart almost deafening every one of us. Who's her? Who is missing, Valerie? His hazel gaze never moved from Valerie, and she didn't pull away. I am sorry, she said quietly. Leonardo took several steps back, grabbing his hair as if suddenly understanding what was going on. Where is Sheila? He asked so calmly, but one could feel the fear, the pain, the rage, and everything in between radiating off him. I couldn't utter a word, their sudden reaction was confusing me. I understand that Kaiser might have something with Sheila, but what was Leonardo's deal? Why did he care so much? Too much. She's missing, Valerie sounded. No. She was abducted, I rephrased, watching both Leonardo's and Kaiser's instant reaction. I could swear they were a second away from losing it. You promised she would be safe. Where were you when she was abducted? He charged toward Valerie, but I blocked him from reaching her. You don't have any right to ask any questions. I was sick of the way they were acting like they had some kind of right on my mate. It was infuriating. They do, Killian, Valerie voiced behind me, and her words forced my gaze on her. Because they are her brothers. Killian's point of view. What nonsense are you saying, Valerie? Those were the first words that managed to fill the air after odd and incredibly long seconds of silence. It's not nonsense, Killian, it's the truth. Sheila, your mate, and the gifted one is Leonardo and Kaiser's sister, Valerie again voiced. What the heck are you doing, Valerie? Kaiser gated forward in rage. Shut it, I growled, silencing everyone. My deep, and now darkened eyes moved from Valerie to Leonardo, who hasn't muttered a word, or moved an inch. His cautious blue eyes were on me, regarding me like a hawk. This couldn't be. I released a small, dry chuckle that lasted for only a second. This is a joke, I shook my head, taking several steps backward. I turned to Morgan, and for the first time, he was completely frozen in his spot. He was speechless and confused. I don't think he realized this was just a lie. A brazen and unrealistic lie. Sheila couldn't be their sister, she couldn't be a black. As the words sounded in my mind, I realized how terrible it was. All of a sudden, I couldn't breathe, I didn't know how to, or rather still, I didn't want to. Valerie's words were outrageous. Sheila shouldn't be that child, she just can't be that child. What games are you playing, Valerie? Did they put you up to this? I growled at her, and in a flash, I was in front of her, wrapping my claws around her neck. Lorenzo moved to rip me off her, but she pulled a hand in the air, forbidding anyone from interrupting us. No one put me up to anything, understand, Killian, and accept the truth. Sheila is that child your father destroyed her entire family and forcibly took away. After many years, we just found her enough. I stopped her from saying any further, jerking my hands from her body as my body began to vibrate from the darkest kind of rage, unable to believe what they called the truth. There's a mistake somewhere. Sheila's family were all dead, she told me herself. I recalled her words, repeatedly. Gracious! What do you think of my brother and I, Killian, that we have spare time on our hands to come up with ridiculous nonsense, just so to sabotage your life? Kaiser yelled furiously from afar. It was more like a comment to himself, but everyone could hear it. I could feel the air prickled with tension, and a murderous rage bouncing off from everyone. And that was a lie. What did you expect her to tell you? Think about it, Killian, didn't she tell you there was something she wanted to let you know after the curse was broken? Well, this is it. I froze, still trying to refute it all. This couldn't be what Sheila had to tell me. Then a thought jumped in. Sheila wasn't a witch, she didn't smell like one. Who do you think caused the blood moon that night? Who do you think is responsible for saving Ria, Alan, and the warriors? Valerie threw the questions at me. I knew it, I heard Morgan mumble to himself as he paced around in circles. I couldn't believe that Sheila did all of this. Still, this doesn't make sense. If Sheila, my mate, was the one that was taken by my father, how on earth did she end up with Lucius? We do not know that, Killian, Valerie muttered. Killian, believe me, this is the truth and deep down, you know it. I pulled my eyes away from Valerie's purple stones, sauntering to the woods where I crashed against a tree. I just had to think clearly. I didn't want to believe any of this, but I couldn't deny the fact that some of it were true. Sheila had something to tell me. Was this it? Oh, goddess! I buried my face in my palm. Was this why she always defended them? More than ever, I wished I could hear Riker. He was much more capable of making sense of all of this. I just couldn't deal with this now. I wouldn't believe any of this until she says it to my face. I had to find Sheila. Listen, I wish we had all the time for this, but we don't. Sheila has been taken, Valerie said, turning in my direction. Brother, I told you, our sister wasn't safe there, Kaiser began as I pulled myself off the tree. How did that happen? Leonardo spoke, anger chewing off his words. We don't know, but the place she was taken from was a mess before we got there, and it seems whoever came for her were witches, Gwen said, standing behind Valerie. I can't believe everyone knew who Sheila was and I didn't. She didn't trust me enough to tell me. I couldn't deny it, it hurt me. But now wasn't the time to think about it. I had to find whoever dared to take her away from my territory. Could they have found out who she was? Leonardo said, holding Valerie's stare. I didn't need to ask who they meant. If Sheila was truly who they claimed she was, then they could only mean the Dark Circle. They? By they, who do you mean? Morgan asked. Why is he still here? Kaiser bellowed. Utter one word again, and I swear I would kill you, Morgan retorted. That's enough. Leonardo yelled, silencing them both. Tell us, is the Dark Circle behind this? This isn't the Dark Circle style, believe me, if they had known who Sheila was, they wouldn't send incompetent witches to take Sheila silently, without causing a ruckus at my pack, I said. Great! Says the son of the asterisk that once took her away, Kai said. His words caused Morgan to hiss angrily, and he charged at Kaiser. Before things got worse than they did, Lorenzo and I pulled them apart. Valerie sighed, before continuing. Killian is right. This isn't the Dark Circle's doing, but I'm afraid it's equally worse, came Valerie's words. Tell us, who has her? Morgan was next to me as our eyes leveled on Valerie. It's Alpha Lucius, Valerie said. I was told by RIA that Sheila received a letter in a box from Alpha Lucius, right before she went to the mountains. We couldn't find the box and the letter, and we can't track her using any spell. I believe they had her cloaked. Oh goddess! He must have found out she regained her memories, Leonardo spoke in a low tone, as pain tore through his blue eyes, which for the first time I realized looked like Sheila's. To be frank, they both shared certain similarities and it spiked my anger. Are we sure it's Lucius? It could be that witch who wants Sheila dead just so to get to that asterisk, Kai pointed out, confusing me. What witch? What do you mean by that? Morgan spoke quickly, but Kaiser only rolled his eyes. The witch sent a message to them. She has no idea of the relationship between them. She thought they had kidnapped her on the night of the blood moon, and wanted some sort of alliance, Valerie said. I tried sending a message back to her, but she never replied. This isn't the time to cast blames. Sheila is in danger and the crescent moon is less than an hour away. We need to plan carefully and find Sheila before Lucius does something to her, Valerie said. There's nothing to plan, that he is going to regret taking her, I hit out in rage, walking away from them. Leonardo blocked me, grabbing my arm. His eyes flashed blue fire. There's no way will I allow you to endanger my sister's life. Lucius isn't as stupid as you think. He had Sheila all these years, knowing who she was. He would be expecting us, and we must play smarter, he said, and I hated his tone. I pushed away his hand from me. Firstly, you don't grab me, and secondly, there's no we. He shut his eyes as if trying to fight his anger. I swear, what in the devil's sick name was the goddess thinking of giving my sister someone like you? You clearly don't deserve her. I clenched my jaw, sharpening my claws and diving them into Leonardo's heart. And with great pleasure I pulled out the tiny organ keeping his life together, tossing it on the rugged earth. Believe me, I wanted that so badly, but something told me that was a bad idea and Sheila would kill me for that. Leonardo is right, we still have no idea why or how Lucius ended up with Sheila. He is dangerous and knew what he was doing when he bound Sheila's powers and locked her memories. My eyes were closed as I listened to Valerie's words. It hurt me to the bones, knowing all those nightmares of hers were about Nell. I remember her telling me about them, and her life back at Lucius Pack. I couldn't make Nell pay for what he had done to her, but I would ensure Lucius did. I had begun to think of many ways of ending him. I mind-linked the Pack's army, ordering them to stand back, and Leonardo called off his men as well. I can't believe we were going to work together. If the goddess had told me this day would come, I would have clawed out her words. And I wanted to, but right now, Sheila's life was more important than my rage and hate. All four of us, including Valerie, Lorenzo, and Gwen, began to plan our raid in Lucius Pack. And after many disagreements, we decided to lead our armies separately, from the north and south borders of the Silver Mist Pack. I informed my warriors of the new plan and we went back to my territory to gather more warriors. Valerie, Lorenzo, and Gwen had to inform the witches of the new plan. The crescent moon rising was less than 30 minutes away, and there was no way we could save my mate, fight against Lucius' army and get back to the pack in time to break the curse. I sighed, going over the plan with Morgan. I didn't inform the rest of my army about Sheila's supposed identity, not even Alan and Mason. My eyes fell into Morgan's green crystals. He had a lot to say. We both did. But none of us were saying anything, at least not until we saved Sheila and broke this curse. Everyone's life was on the line. Oh, Goddess! I hope everything goes as planned tonight. I just hope. Sheila's point of view. I groaned awake. My head was throbbing hard against my skull. I winced at the intense pain racing through my bones. Slowly, my heavy lashes pulled apart and my eyes fluttered open. I inhaled deeply, feeling so weak, I couldn't even move a muscle and the ache in my head grew worse. I mustered all my strength, pushing myself up to a seating position. I groaned loudly, grabbing both sides of my head with my hands in a poor attempt to stop my head from exploding literally. Gosh, my head hurts. My whole body vibrated with pain. I placed my hand on my neck, feeling the stinging pain that was spreading from my neck. I realized I was bleeding. It wasn't deep, but I still felt intense pain from there. What happened to me? I fought the dizziness that tempted me back to slumber. I tried to concentrate hard on my thoughts, trying to remember what had happened to me. I sank deeper into my memories when instantly, broken pieces from my memories began to glue back together. I remembered everything. The message from Lucius, those stupid witches, and then I was shot with an arrow. But it was most definitely laced with something that had placed me in this weak state. My eyes scanned around, and I realized I was on a bed. I kept fighting the dizziness, taking a look around, and my eyes went around quickly and I panicked. This wasn't my chamber, neither was it Killian's or any other chamber in the Crescent North Pack, because I knew exactly where I was. But it couldn't be. No, I couldn't possibly be back. My heart mounted a race and finally exploded when I heard a voice that I haven't heard in a long time, and I didn't miss a bit. Lucius Colasso. Isn't it good to be back home, my child? I shut my eyes, my head tilting to the far end of the chamber, near the window. I pulled my eyes open and they fell on the man I detested with my life. I couldn't hide the grimace that fell on my lips. Where's Devon? I asked without mincing words, my vision getting clearer, but the weakness remained. Is that any way to greet your father after a long time? He said seriously, but there was a sneer in his voice, and his lips held a smirk that I wanted to kill off his face. And to the goddess, I will. I will. Is this any way to treat your daughter that hasn't been home for a while, not forgetting the fact that I was forced here against my will? I bit out through gritted teeth. I apologize. Those can be quite incompetent. I will make sure I deal with them later on, he said, pretending to care for a second, before shutting his eyes closed as if remembering something. He opened his eyes, and the look on his face hardened. I almost forgot, you killed every one of them, clearly, not all of them, I said, remembering that shot the arrow at me. My eyes widened as realization hit me. You were the one that sent after Killian and I. His smirk deepened, as he pulled away from the wall, and landed graciously on the chair close to the window. To be clear, I was only after that. It was never in my plans to put you in harm's way. It has always been my priority to keep you safe, so your true nature wouldn't be forced out, but that made a costly mistake, inviting that pack to raid your mate pack in an attempt to murder you. That was why you came to Killian's pack the other day, to check if I had gotten my powers back, and when you didn't succeed that Peach informed you when I had fought her, using my magic, I said, my rage building up, giving me the strength to fight the weakness within me to access my magic and burn alive. That's correct, but let's not bore ourselves with such nonsense. I cut him off. Yes, I totally agree with you. Let's talk about something else. Like how you robbed me of my memories and bound my powers, making me believe I was your daughter. I shouted at him, trying to connect to 80, but I couldn't. Something was wrong, but I tried to keep my panic and distress hidden. Oh child, don't tell me you feel aggrieved. He released a throaty chuckle. You should be grateful to me, because of me you were spared from the hands of the Dark Circle. If I hadn't ambushed Nell that night, you would have been offered on a silver platter to the Dark Lord himself. Don't tell me nonsense. You speak as though you did me a favor. You took me for a reason. Why? I asked. If only you turned out to be exactly how I wanted you to be, you could have been the one bringing to me. That's just great. Once again, it all has to do with your greed. All you did was make my life a living hell. You even offered me to your worst enemy just so to punish me, I raked angrily. That was a mistake on my part. One I regretted soon enough. Who could have known that he will end up falling for you? You were supposed to be my ace card, being his mate, my plan B just in case he messed up, but you went ahead and ruined it all. I could discern the rage and the usual hatred from his voice. So because I interfered with Killian's life, I ruined your plan. Tell me, Lucius, what does she have to do with any of these? I was curious to know, and deep down hoping I could get a clue as to who that woman was. Did I know her? I honestly can't believe you still haven't figured her out yet. Well, that doesn't concern me, he spoke sharply in a hurry. Lucius stood up from his chair. I am sorry, my love, but I have to go. The crescent moon is almost upon us, and I have so much to do. Oh, my goddess! I almost forgot tonight's crescent moon. If Killian and the pack are not able to break the curse before midnight, they would be stuck in with the curse forever. No, I have to escape. I tried to connect with 80 again, but it was impossible. I was also unable to feel my magic. I felt absolutely nothing. The fear I had hidden rose to the surface as my eyes met Lucius. What did you do to me? I tried pulling up from the bed, noticing the metal shackles confining my wrists to the bed. He pressed his lips together, smiling darkly. You didn't think that I would bring you here without taking caution. You were shot with something quite special made by the witches. There's no way you will be able to use your powers for a while, so just rest up while I prepare for him that is on his way here to save you. Lucius motioned forward to me, grabbing my face in his hands. He placed a kiss on my forehead. Rest well, love. He went to the door, before turning his eyes back on me. I will send someone to bring some food for you. He left and locked it from outside. I pulled out from the bed, ignoring the pain in my gut. I had to get out of here. My eyes fell on the darkness that was outside. The moon would be up any minute from now. I had to leave before Killian charged here with his warriors. Lucius was well prepared for them. I turned to the chains confining my wrists. I made several attempts to set myself free, but it was next to impossible as the tiredness in my body kept dragging me down. Whatever they had shot me with was still in my blood. I had to fix that first. Just then the door pulled open and a warrior dressed in one of the pack's clothing came in with a tray of food and water. He placed it on the bed, and without saying anything to me, he left. My eyes scrutinized the tray on the bed. There was nothing I could use to free myself. They had intentionally removed every sharp utensil from the tray. I grabbed the metal plate, tossing away the content on the floor. I began to bend it, forming a sharp edge. I was done. My finger ran over the sharpness of the plate that could now pierce through anything. I held it tightly to the spot where I had been shot. I took in several breaths, before piercing it to my neck, tearing it up. I didn't make the wound that deep, but wide enough to bleed out as much as I could, and hopefully, I would be able to bleed out what little I could of whatever had been shot at. Sheila's point of view, I gasped weakly, placing a hand over my neck where I had wounded myself. I was beginning to think this was a bad idea as the blood on my neck began to rush out fastly. I was bleeding badly. The worst case scenario is that I may probably die before I get the chance to break out of here or before Killian found me. I knew he would be going crazy trying to find me. And that's exactly what Lucius wants. He wanted them here. He didn't want the curse to be broken, thereby ensuring Killian's and the pack's soon demise, all in the name of greed. I groaned, as the strength in my hand was slowly escaping, and my blue dress and cloak had been smeared with my blood. I couldn't even move properly on the bed as every movement on the bed was restricted by the chains binding me. I tried to seek aid out, but it was again useless. It was as if there was a wall separating us. After a while of bleeding out, I pulled up from the bed, forcing myself into a seating position. I brought the chains around my wrists closer to me and muttered a few chants to set myself free, but it didn't work. I collapsed on the bed. Whatever Lucius's witches had concocted was far stronger than I imagined. I took a cursory glance outside the window. I could already notice an outline of the crescent moon in the sky. Time was racing against us. Killian. I held on to the smeared sheets and dug my nails into them. What should I do? I thought hard about what to do, and unfortunately, every potential solution I came up with either involved my magic or AD or me getting free first, but there was absolutely nothing on how to break this chain off. My heart began to thud loudly, as the realization of my impossible situation hit me, and fear of Killian and the pack not surviving the crescent moon dawned on me, and even frustration didn't hesitate to get on the boat. We've come this far to not break the curse. I closed my eyes, screaming from the helplessness I felt. I stopped immediately when I heard the shattering noise around me. My eyes opened and everything in the chamber was in utter ruins. I gasped in disbelief, my lips forming a smile. It appears all hope wasn't lost yet. I was up on the bed, bringing my wrists to my lips, praying to the moon goddess to make this work. I focused on where the chains bound me and directed my scream at it. In sheer surprise, cold mist glazed over the metal shackles at my scream, and I persisted the more, watching it become as frail as glass and shattered at the sound of my voice. A series of laughter escaped my lungs as I wobbled from the bed to the floor. I reached for the door, but it was locked. I muttered some chants, but it didn't work. Well, it seemed like my scream was all I'd got. I knocked on the door, placing my ears against it. I heard the heavy steps of boots, indicating there were warriors outside the door that I had to deal with. I knocked again, requesting their attention, and I indeed gained it as I heard several steps move closer to the door, accompanied by whispers. maybe contemplating if they should open the door or not. But I didn't care. I took a step backward and concentrated my scream at the door. The sound of my voice pierced through the door, shattering it to pieces. The impact of my scream caused the warriors behind the door to bleed profusely from their ears and their noses while their eyes burned out. I could almost taste the foul smell on my tongue. This disaster got the attention of the other warriors Lucius had stationed outside my chamber. I stepped out from the chamber, grabbing one of the swords that fell next to a dead warrior. I shook my eyes to steady my vision and prayed to the goddess my legs don't give up on me yet. I lunged at them as they drew closer to attack me, plucking their hearts swiftly with my sword, while dodging the attacks from behind. I rooted the pointed tip of the sword on the floor, and I smiled briefly before my lips parted and I released a shrilling scream that sent every one of them flying and blood staining the floor. I watched all of them fall to their deaths. I pulled my dress up and began racing through the hallways to escape. I hadn't gone far when I felt strong arms grip me and lifted my body from the floor. I was pinned to the wall and a large hand covered by black leather gloves covered my lips from screaming. I was thrashing around when I felt the warmth of a familiar body pressed against mine and then I felt the sparks. My eyes flashed open in shock and they fell on Killian's darkened amber eyes. "Shhh," he whispered against my ears, and slowly, his hand covering my lips pulled away. "We should hurry." Before Killian could complete his words, I stood on the tip of my boots and pulled Killian's neck down so my lips could swallow his in a kiss. As soon as Killian's lips felt mine, he wrapped his arms around me and lifted me from the floor, pinning me to his body while he kissed me back hungrily. I felt my back against the wall as Killian began to suck on my lips, licking every corner of my mouth. Ahem, Killian and I jerked away from each other immediately, our heads turning to the right where Valerie was standing as if she had been passing by. "I apologize for the intrusion, but we do not have much time on our hands. The crescent moon is up already," she spoke in a low tone. "We must hurry at once." "Hurry? Wait a minute. How did they get in here?" Before I could ask, Killian nodded to Valerie and grabbed my wrist, and pulled me back to the direction of my chamber where I had escaped from. He stopped abruptly when his eyes fell on the horrid mess I had made. "This won't work." He took another turn in the hallway, pushing open another door of a chamber on the floor of mine. "We need to be running out of here, not locking ourselves up." Valerie said the moon is up, and we need to curse. I pointed out the obvious while Killian bolted the door from inside. I hurried to the door but he gripped me and pulled me in his arms. "Did he hurt you?" he asked and I paused for a quarter second, staring into Killian's amber crystals that held his concern for me. I shook my head. "Let's get moving now before the moon fades away and we miss this opportunity," I said. Killian's large palm fell on my face and I was forced to stare into his eyes. They held concern for me, and also pain and something else I couldn't fathom. There was something his eyes were holding back. "Did something happen?" Killian walked behind me and I turned around confused, only for him to pull me closer to him, and his hand slid up my back and stopped at my neck. He brushed my hair back from my neck, while his fingers ran up and down the nape of my neck, making my body begin to turn hot. With one pull, Killian removed the cloak around my neck and his fingers trailed the small wound on my neck. I saw only hurt in his eyes before his lips kissed them gently. As much as I loved what was going on, we had an actual curse to break. What are you doing, Killian? The curse, there's no time to go back to the pack, it will be broken right here, he said. What? Lucius, he will. Killian's thumb fell on my lips. Let's forget about Lucius now, he said. There's something I want you to know, he whispered to me, brushing against my lips. I nodded for him to continue, even though his touch on my body had begun to make me think naughtily. No matter what happens between us, or after this, I love you and will never stop loving you. Killian's fingers trailed to my chin, and leaned closer to me, kissing me softly, then he stopped. I love you to the point that I can't live without you, Killian voiced softly, slipping a hand into my hair. My gaze was pinned on his, as I let him speak. I know I am not good with speeches, or being romantic, but whatever happens tonight, I want you to know that I love you always. You are my world, Sheila. He took a deep breath, leaning his head on mine. I know that disagree on many things, and I know that I might not be worthy of your love. No, I cut him off. I hated the look in his eyes. But he stopped me. That's the truth, Sheila. I am not worthy of you, I've made mistakes. But, shamelessly, I want a chance with you, and I love you. He didn't take his eyes off me. I nodded. I love you too, Killian, always, I said to him. And forever. Killian's eyes narrowed on me and we dwelt in silence, staring intently at each other. Even when screams of horror filtered into the chamber from the window, we still didn't budge. And then his lips brushed against mine. In a swift motion, we were on the bed, and Killian was on top of me. I could feel all of him. His warmth, his body, his desires, and his agony. Sheila's point of view in a quick motion, I was on the bed and Killian was on top of me, kissing me. His kisses started as slow, and passionate. I could feel every emotion in them. It was like he was communicating some kind of message to me. It was so deep and made me feel things. It was always like this. Whenever Killian and I did these things, it always felt like it was our first. There were sparks and goosebumps all over my skin, not because of the cold air around the chamber, but because Killian stopped kissing my lips and began kissing my neck and my shoulder blade. It made my body weak. He positioned himself firmly on top of me as he continued assaulting my neck. I felt him graze the crook of my neck, at my marking spot. He took his sweet time before returning his lips to mine. I shut my eyes, grabbing hold of Killian's jacket. I was literally dying of so much pleasure, and what's worse, he was barely doing anything to me. Killian pulled me up in his arms, and his fingers moved to the front of my dress, untying the rope holding my dress together. And effortlessly, it fell. Killian continued to undress me gently, slowly, and carefully, until I was on the soft velvet sheets of the bed. He took off his clothes and climbed on top of me. His eyes were so dark with admiration and love. He was taking it very slowly with me. I didn't know if I liked it or not. But I loved his gentle touches, and it also made my heart flutter, knowing Killian and I would finally be one. I would bear his mark and he would bear mine. We would be united both in our hearts and in the eyes of the moon goddess. His fingers ran over my body, caressing every part of me, and all I could do was moan at his touches. He leaned on me, pushing back the locks of hair that covered my ears. "You are so beautiful, mate. I blushed at his words as my body arched against Killian's. I couldn't take the torture anymore. I just wanted him inside of me, and he read my thoughts and his lips returned to mine. Even though he was trying his best to hide the pain of the moon's effect on him, I could still feel it. I felt everything he was feeling and I wanted to share everything with him. His love, his happiness, and his pain. I moaned, finding my hands rubbing down Killian's back. He began thrusting inside me, each heavenly thrust of his making me moan out his name. I gripped him tightly, as he pumped harder and faster, bouncing hard on the wooden bed. I felt electrifying tingles in my body. It was like my whole body lit up in flames as you felt my release. The passion that intoxicated both of us was overwhelming. Killian growled as he reached his climax and he pulled out of me, falling beside me on the bed. He scooped me into his arms, and our eyes connected. He bored at me like he was seeing right through my soul. "Are you ready?" he asked, flipping my head to my other side, exposing my marking spot where his mark should be. My hand cupped his cheek and I nodded. I couldn't trust myself to speak, because I could already feel the stinging from my eyes. Frankly, I never expected this day would come for Killian and me, where I would be the only one to bear his mark. To be rightfully his and he would be all mine. The feeling was surreal. I wrapped my hands around his neck as he came on me again. He kissed me gently before pulling his lips to my neck where he began kissing it so softly. "It will hurt only for a second," he whispers in my ears. And I held on to him tighter, burying my head in his chest. Soon, I felt Killian's sharp canines graze my neck and in the next quarter second, I felt its sharpness dive right into my neck. I gritted my teeth to stop myself from screaming, my hands around Killian's neck and pressed down the skin of my back until I felt my nails wet and warm with his blood. Killian's canines sank deeper, tasting my blood. The pain slowly wandered away and what I began feeling was a new sensation, something I had never felt. It was so alien, causing so much pleasure to me, that I kept moaning, feeling myself so turned on. Killian slowly pulled his fangs out. I trailed my finger on the spot he had just bitten me and I felt something on my neck. It was still fresh but it barely pained me. Killian was smiling at me. "How do you feel?" "Super great," I said against his lips. His brows were crinkled. "What?" Not the word I was hoping to hear. "It'll come, but after my turn." I gripped his neck and flipped us over on the bed and I was on top of his godlike body, straddling my mate. I felt powerful. I didn't know if it was just me, or Killian's new strength I had begun to share. I heard a naughty smile at the back of my head. 80. I could feel her. She was back. It made me smile. This was no fun without her naughty remarks. Killian groaned, running his hands on my body, while I feasted on the crook of his neck, and without hesitating, I pierced his neck with my pointed canines. Killian's sweet blood rushed into my mouth, and I moaned, mixing my wolf's essence with his blood. After I was done, I retracted my canines, collapsing on his large body. "How do you feel?" I asked, looking into his eyes. "Complete," he leaned closer, kissing me. "Me too," I paused, realizing Killian's voice had just echoed in my head. He didn't even move his lips. He could mind link me now. "Killian." I tested it, mind-linking him, and it worked. I love you. I love you more, he said, kissing me as we lay in silence for a few minutes. What comes now? I asked. Is the curse broken now that we've officially mated and have marked each other? I guess we will know when the night is over, Killian said. For now, we need to get dressed. Yet and figure out a way to get out of here. Lucius is crazy, I said, as Killian helped me get dressed. Killian got dressed, while I leaned back on the bed and watched him until he was done. I have to go, Killian kissed my forehead. Please stay in here and lock the doors. I crippled my brows. Why? I was up on my boots. I have to go find Lucius, Killian spat his name distastefully. He needs to pay for what he did to you. Killian, I grabbed him. No. We need to find a way to leave here without starting a war, please, I moved to him. We didn't know if the curse was broken and the last thing I wanted was for Killian to get hurt. His warm hand found my cheek, while the other snaked around my waist as he tugged me closer to him. It's nice to feel you worry about me, he kissed me. Now let's just leave without creating a ruckus, I said, pulling him, but he remained unmoving. I am afraid, love, it's too late for that. As we speak we are at war, Killian voiced, looking towards the window. What? I rushed towards the window, pulling it open. There was a fight going on, but I couldn't hear a thing. The witches had ensured no sounds disturbed us, Killian said behind me. I turned to him. Are you saying we made it and took our sweet time marking each other in the middle of a war? Killian smirked. It would indubitably go down in history. This isn't funny, Killian, I hushed him. Lucius is crazy and he has witches by his side. They did something to me and now I can't seem to use my magic. I froze the instant the last word carelessly flew from my lips. It was too late to take it back. My heart started to race, as Killian's eyes just held mine, without muttering a word. It scared me. And my fear rose more, realizing he could now feel my emotions and I couldn't control them. This was the worst time to tell Killian the truth. We should go, I said, sidestepping him, avoiding his piercing gaze that felt like he was seeking out the truth from my eyes. Before I could walk away, Killian grabbed me. You had something to tell me tonight, he said, almost in a whisper, making me remember our conversation last night. I promised to tell him the truth but I can't. Not now. Tell me, I am ready to hear it. Killian, we need to, I began, but Killian's fingers stopped me from speaking. No, Sheila. Tell me now. I just want to hear it from your lips. Please just tell me, he said to me. His eyes were pleading, demanding me to trust him. But I couldn't. Suddenly, the fear of Killian's reaction when he learns the truth invaded me. I'm sorry, Killian, I can't. Tell him, Adi voiced her thoughts. But I shook my head mentally, I was not going to tell him. Tell him, she sounded again. No, I yelled back at her. My decision was made up. My eyes met Killian's amber crystals. I sighed. I am sorry, Killian, but abruptly, I stopped speaking, and I felt my consciousness tossed back while Adi took over my body. My real name is Sheila Black. Yes, sister to them you keep insulting." I heard her echo those words, before returning to the back of my mind, and I was back on the surface. "There, I said it," she muttered, before completely locking herself out of my mind, leaving me to deal with her mess, all alone. Sheila's point of view. The words echoed more in my head as Killian's persistent stare was on me. I swear if I hadn't been so sure that I said those words, I would have sworn Killian didn't hear them. I felt his calm breath on me, while my heart banged so fast that it drummed in my ears. Still, Killian didn't say anything. I couldn't even figure out his emotions. They were over the place. A mixture of pain, rage, sadness, and total confusion. He shut his eyes and pulled away from me. I almost hissed in protest. I held onto the soft fabric of my dress as Killian started to pace around the room with his eyes closed and a hand in his hair. "Killian," I moved closer to where he was. I couldn't even hide the trembling in my voice. I was terrified. So terrified of Killian's reaction to the truth. On many occasions, I have imagined just how things would play out when he finally learns the truth, and the outcome was never good. It always resulted in Killian and I breaking up. Just the thought of it caused a unique pain in my chest, and my eyes flooded with tears. Oh, goddess, he was going to leave me. Killian stopped pacing. His dark amber eyes fell on me and regarded me with hooded eyes as if he was feeling the pain I was in and knowing my fearful thoughts at the moment. But all I could feel from him was those three emotions, fighting for dominance. Pain, rage, and confusion. Killian closed his eyes for a while before opening them. And what I saw within those depths scared me. He took a step forward, and I took several backward. He had a lot to say, things I wouldn't like. Things I didn't want to hear. I fought a new wave of tears that wanted to escape my eyes, sauntering back to the bed where my cloak was. "Sheila," Killian's voice sounded as he watched me move around the chamber. I grabbed my cloak and wore it above my dress. "Killian, we should talk later. For now, let's help the others." I wiped off the tear stain from my eyes, locking my emotions. I didn't want anything to drag me down. I turned for the door when Killian held me back from my waist and forced me to look into his eyes, which now terrified me. I loved Killian, and I knew he loved me too. But is his love for me strong enough to bury the hatred he has for my family? I didn't know. And I didn't want to find out now. "Sheila, listen to me," he said, so low that it could be seen as a whisper. His eyes reflected the pain in my chest, and that pain attempted to smother me. "Please, Killian," I said in his warmth. "Later," I added, and he stared at me like he was studying me, before nodding. "Fine, let's go," he muttered with almost no emotion. Killian and I left the chamber and navigated our way to the grand floor, walking past so many dead bodies both in their wolf and human forms. We stepped outside through another door in the castle, and there was barely a fight going on, or rather it was almost over, as Lucius' warriors had dropped in number and were outnumbered by Killian's warriors and an army of other warriors. It can't be. I felt myself panicking as I recognized the scent of the other army. They were my brother's army. How on earth could this be? I glanced over to where Killian was fighting in his human form. Now fear danced across my face as I realized if Killian found them here, things were going to be ugly. I had to find Leonardo. "Behind you," I heard Killian's voice amid my thoughts. But before I could make out what he meant, I felt a presence lunge at me, and I was ripped from its path by Killian. Lucius's warrior's claws only tore through my arm, but it didn't look that deep, even though it hurt. Killian instantly killed the wolf, turning to me. "What were you thinking?" he said, not in a high-pitched tone. But I only stared at him with wide eyes. He gripped my bleeding arm, which wasn't healing yet. Whatever that which had shot at me still impeded me from accessing my wolf abilities and magic. "Here," he placed a sword in my hand. "Let's go, please stay close to me." We made it to the front of the castle where the fight had ended, finding Brielle and Alan with some of our warriors. Some of Lucius' men and witches were dead, while some were captured already, and a greater half had somehow escaped. Killian left me with them to go after Lucius. I inspected the dead bodies of the witches, but none of them belonged to that witch. And she wasn't among those captured. I sighed, the most important one got away. I went in the direction of where Killian left, searching for him, leading me to the woods. From afar, I heard several men gather around, talking, or rather arguing heatedly and angrily. Killian was one of them, including Lorenzo, and Morgan and my nose got a whiff of the others. They were my brothers. "Sister," Kai turned to me and moved to where I was rooted in a hurry. He pulled me in his arms the instant I was within his reach. My body became stiff, as my eyes traveled to Killian's, whose gaze was on us. I could only feel rage from him, but he pulled his eyes away from us. It confused me. If my brothers were here, it simply meant they came along with Killian. Does that mean Killian knew the truth before I told him? My emotions were high. I tried calming it down, but I couldn't. Goddess, I didn't want to make a total disaster here, especially not when Killian was staring at me. He could no doubt feel the chaos in my soul. I looked away from his gaze when Morgan motioned forward to me. I couldn't find the strength to look away. He knew too. His emerald green eyes told me. "Morgan," I didn't even know what to say. I was so focused on Killian that I didn't think about how broken I would feel if the people I had learned to care about in Killian's pack rejected me. Before I could force myself to say further, Morgan embraced me tightly. I couldn't stop the tears that rushed from my eyes as he pulled away after a while. Those spotless green eyes of his had a lot of questions for me. Lorenzo stalked forward. And I searched around, but there was no Valerie. "And Valerie? She is taking care of the ritual," Lorenzo said, and my eyes went up into the sky. The crescent moon had vanished from the sky. I hoped the ritual worked and the curse was broken. "My army has swept through the territory," Leonardo said, after being mind-linked. "They couldn't find Lucius. He must have escaped before the war started." "Yes, and with more than half of his army and witches." "That imbecile will be back," I said, knowing the type of person Lucius was. He wouldn't stop until he sees Killian dead and conquers his pack. "I hope he comes back," Killian sounded from where he was still rooted. "In the meantime, some warriors will be monitoring the pack. In case he shows up." He moved closer. "We should get going," he said specifically to me. "She isn't going anywhere with you." I closed my eyes briefly as Kaiser's voice sounded. I could already feel Killian's rage intensifying, and so was Kaiser's. "The truth is out. She's one of us, there's no way we would let you leave with her, my sister isn't safe with you. Killian took a step forward, his eyes were so dark, but Morgan spoke before he could. And she is with you? Morgan asked, sarcastically, making Kaiser chuckle. Let's not pretend everything is suddenly all right. I still hate you, and you do the same. Sheila is family, at least she wouldn't have to be constantly in fear, wondering just when any one of you would turn on her and complete the task your father started years ago, handing her to the dark circle. Before Kaiser could finish his words, Morgan sent a steady blow at him which Kai reciprocated quickly. Before things turned into something ugly, Lorenzo stepped in between them, separating them. My sister isn't going back to that god-forsaken pack, Kaiser spat, furiously. That's not for you to decide, Morgan replied. Almost in an instant, the air became tense, as I felt everyone's eyes shift on me as if expecting me to suddenly step up and make a decision. I shook my head, folding my arms against my chest. This is very bad.